So good afternoon edition of Coffee Conversations. There's water in here, but we're going to go with a locally owned mug for Trace Indy. And I'm super excited because today we're not in Indy. So today, Femily Howe, and we are in California. And I am so pumped because we've tried to talk before, but you are so busy and so amazing. And y'all, here's a little background. So I met Femily through Chairman Mom. And we've talked about that before. We've talked to Adamika. We had a great event last year. It all is just a blend, with Chairman Mom, and some of you got to meet them. So really love that organization and brings really amazing women together. But let's talk about Fem. So Femily is, I love this, Silicon Valley's #1 gender equity advisor. This is a true story. And then she's also the founder and executive director of the American Association of Corporate Gender Strategists. That's a lot. Femily, thank you so much for taking the time and having water with me this afternoon, morning.
Jillian, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we're having this long, delayed conversation. And I think it's the perfect time because it's right now.
I love that. So tell people, what does it mean to be, we're jumping in because you have a lot to say, and I want to make sure I'm aware of time for everyone. So what does it mean to be a gender and equity advisor?
Yeah. So I help companies, generally tech companies, generally in Silicon Valley, get better for women, become places where women want to work, where women can do their best work, where women from all sorts of intersectional identities, women of color, queer and trans women, can come to work in their full flair and have exactly as fair of a shot at the C-suite, at the first bump up from individual contributor, at any of the jobs that their male peers have the access and opportunities to.
It's so good. So you contribute to a lot of things because I'm going to link to her website, but NPR, ABC News, C-SPAN, Forbes, all the things, right? Fast Company, all the things. And you're helping a lot of people. And again, we're going to link to all the things because her socials are really great. There's just so many nuggets of really great information, whether it comes to pronouns or I learn something new, I swear to God, every week. And I think I'm pretty aware. So it's so really important, all the work that she does. So tell us, how'd you get there? Like, how'd you get to this point where you're like, I'm going to do this hard work and I'm going to stand up for all these other people, but how does one get to that point?
I love this because last week I was being interviewed by US News and World Report about what do you do with a gender studies degree? And so this is partially one of the many answers, because with gender studies degrees, for example, you can go into nonprofit or you can forget about it and go into corporate and just use this sort of women's empowerment sensibility in there. But I'm sort of doing them both, right, at the same time. So I've always been an advocate for underdogs. That's like this theme from preschool to now, the underserved, the underappreciated. As someone who is a woman, a queer person, a Jewish person, right? I've seen the world from many points of marginalization, as well as being a white person, a person who came from a family with money. I see the world through all these lenses of privilege also. #intersectionality, right? So I've always had a thing for helping the underdogs. In college, I did women's studies degree and master's and did sort of white feminism, right? I cared about the topics that if you only eliminated sexism, then everything would be good for the women. But that's like not so great if you are still a queer woman, still a woman of color, and the racism and the homophobia are still plaguing you. So I had that awakening when I started Boston's largest meetup group. It sounds sort of funny, but it was a queer women's meetup group. And we collaborated with a bunch of other queer groups who were more intersectional, who were race and sexuality oriented, who were trans groups, who really helped me see how critical it was to have an anti-racist lens with my family. And so after running that Boston group, I moved to California because I always had the itch to move to the West Coast. And what I noticed there when I was going out to art events is that the women artists were not getting I could have peeked into any industry, cooking, library science, physical therapy, law, finance, but I peeked into the art world and the women artists were not getting a fair shake. They were not getting the gallery space, the gallery pay, et cetera. So I was like, I'm going to host a show and showcase all of the women of all colors who especially who are doing street art, influence art, and invite all the male curators and the female curators who weren't that great at showcasing equal gender talent, and then introduce them all. We've talked about this, Jillian, how we're major introducers. It was the biggest networking event / also a really fun art show. So I ran that for a while. It was called Femme Cartel. And then, so that's sort of my passion projects, right?
Yeah.
What I haven't mentioned yet is my professional life. So I've done a bunch of different things. I was a publicist in New York, helping progressive thought leaders get, into the New York Times and the LA Times and the Chronicle of Philanthropy and whatever their industry papers were and in the media world that they wanted to be in. And then I did strategic communications for a bunch of organizations and management consulting. I was with a big firm management consultant. All of this is to say I was very focused on companies for my paycheck, right?
Yep.
And so then after a certain president got elected, which was not my favorite president, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't just be a cog in the corporate machine. I'm going to take all of these feminist passion things that I'm doing outside of work. I'm going to braid them together with my gender studies masters that I know. I'm going to read up all of the work from McKinsey and Lean In, which I was also helping them do publicity. So I was enmeshed in the work. And I'm going to take what I know about management consulting and I'm going to braid them together. And I am going to become someone who knows how to help companies change specifically when it comes to making things better for women.
I'm going to take a pause to soak all of that in. I will say for those even here in Indy or wherever you are sitting, she also does so big work and all of that and in the Valley a lot, but she also does a thought leadership course. Let's talk on that for just a quick second, because I took that. So that was my gift to myself at the start of the pandemic, which feels like a lifetime ago. And it was awesome. And I learned a ton. I still get icky about marketing myself, but like those thoughts being out there and sharing there are things that I obviously know better than anyone else, right? Just like things better than anyone else that I can lend my voice to. And I think that was just so eye-opening for me. Can you tell people what that thought leadership course is?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a program for queer and trans people and feminists and women and anyone else who's been marginalized and told, we don't need your voice yet, or there's already someone here speaking on that topic, or we're interviewing someone else, or when you look at panels, it's lots of times mostly men and lots of times mostly white men.
White men.
Yes. And so I am taking what I learned from the public relations world and what I learned from elevating myself as an expert in the field. And I've made a curriculum. And so it's a 10-week program where I bring together about 60 people from all over the world who don't love self-promotion and who are going from couch to 5K, as I say, in terms of the self-promotion journey. And it can be self-promotion or the promotion of an initiative or an area of awareness or a nonprofit or an organization that you run. And we go through it. We go through the skill building. We go through the network building. There's some like rah, you're awesome between new friends that you make in the program, right? There's some really serious heavy hitting stuff like do these things every day and then you will get media coverage. It's the whole spectrum.
I just want to plug that. I mean, again, I paid for it. It was wonderful. And I still have all that information. And one day I might bug you for a new workbook, but I loved it.
I'll send it your way.
So where have you found, it's a weird question coming from someone or going to someone who is doing work in marginalized communities, right? And so, but let's hit it anyway. Yeah. So where do you find struggle, but let's bookend to where's that delight coming from?
Yeah. So the struggle for me, as it's an entrepreneurial struggle, which I know
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, a lot of your.
It could be literally like I had COVID last year, and here's where I'm at.
Oh,
like,
no, mine's. I mean, I did, and that was not. But okay, entrepreneurial struggle is that you always have to be on
Yeah.
in the way of like, hey, how are you? I'm on here, but more so, my clients hope that I will be on for them on a Saturday afternoon, taking meetings throughout any moment of whenever.
Yeah.
And certainly when there's a gender related emergency in the workplace, I'll take that. But I'm not going to do a weekly debrief meeting on a, Friday afternoon at 3. I'm really not. So I mentally know that, and I'm good at drawing my boundaries, but my heart and my body and myself hasn't caught up. And I feel guilt about I do no meeting Mondays and also no meeting Fridays. And I feel I barely ever say that out loud because I don't feel comfortable really telling my clients that. I feel like they're going to think I'm not a hard worker. All I'm doing on Mondays and Fridays is working for them. I'm just not sitting in back-to-back meetings. I'm actually working harder for them, but saying those words makes it seem like I don't care. That's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Yeah. But where do you find delight from that?
Oh God. I mean, the delight is from of course I get delight helping tech companies get better for women and marginalized folks. My truer cherry on top passion is helping the individuals, whether it's in Future Thought Leader or I run a different program called Momentum, which is for marginalized techies, marginalized people who love technology. They just aren't loved back by the tech industry so much.
Yeah.
And helping those programs are outside of corporate walls.
Yeah.
Individuals join Future Thought Leader, individuals join Momentum. And seeing the connections, I mean, we've talked about this before, you're a connector too, like seeing the connections between the people starting a podcast, having someone else from the program on the podcast, everyone elevating together in spite of not being a part of the old boys network, seeing people start one together and engage in one together. I mean, that's what really gets me going.
Oh, that's so good. And I've seen that happen and it's amazing. Nothing is better. But let's talk about how the community can show up. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. I mean, when I think about how people can show up in that way, I think a lot about, so after the civil rights reckoning started 2 years ago, a lot of white people, especially white women, started leading initiatives and caring more deeply in companies and doing a lot of reading and stuff. And so I think showing up to actively replace structures that disenfranchise women, especially Black women, but women of all colors, actively, whatever the activism is, whatever the thing is that you care about, don't just read about it and get enlightened. Change something that even if you fall off the planet, that change will still be there, right? Make a new rule in your company that says we're not going to hire someone until we've interviewed 2 women for this position or 2 racial minorities for this position, right? You get hit by a bus and it's still like that policy is still helping your company, right? And the second thing I would say is a lot of white women, when we find out there is racial struggle in America that's deeper and more profound and more persistent than we ever knew, we want to do something right away. And we often take our connections to white dollars and try to start our own anti-racist things. Much better is marching and giving those dollars from our contacts, our own careers, to Black and brown people who are already doing the work, right? To feminists who are already doing the work. Fall in line between Black community organizers in your city who are already immersed in the issues and doing the work, rather than starting a sort of competing organization.
Oh my God, I love it so much. It's so good. So with that, right, stepping up and doing all that work, I feel like this is a very easy question for you, but I think we all kind of take it for a moment but Femily, how are you going to leave your trace?
Ooh. So this is why there's a difference for me between helping companies and helping and like pairing up and powering up with individuals. I'm leaving my mark with the individuals, with the movement of individuals who are, starting to use their voices in ways that haven't been heard before. So, the folks that come out of Future Thought Leader who are starting podcasts for South Asian queer women who've never felt so seen or so heard before, or DEI consultants who are used to going largely unrecognized, but now after knowing how to do a tiny bit of self-promotion are getting quoted by, you know, business magazines, right? A housing advocate last week was just on the front page of our local newspaper, raising awareness about the homeless issues in ways that she hadn't been out there before. I mean, so seeing these ripple effects, I think my impact will be the Old Boys Network is shifting, right? It's no longer enough to just have a panel that's all white boys, right? We're making our own network together, right? With your podcasts and other people's podcasts and us raising our voices and getting quoted in the media. I mean, yeah, that's what we're doing. I think, yeah, that's the trace I want to leave.
That's a lot.
Use their own voice. Stop getting overlooked. Talented, amazing people who are underrepresented are getting overlooked. And the point here is it's not a vanity project. It's like, if you're being overlooked, so are your ideas, so is your community, so are the ideas you have for changing the world. So this is all about giving back to the community by getting the recognition that you deserve and that your ideas deserve.
Oh, that was like the best snippet. Like now I'm like, shit, I gotta go get some stuff done. I need to like rock all this stuff out. It's so good. I am so grateful for your time, for being able to connect with me and just share your story and your message of how you got there and the why. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And I'm just so grateful for the work that you do for all of us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time to just sit and think about all this stuff. It's really helpful. I now feel more inspired. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.